Don't stop, go get it,
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of James's Corner. I'm excited about my guest today. Today we have Joshua Mitchell on. He's a fellow cystic fibrosis warrior like myself, advocate for the chronic illness community, and just a very driven individual. If you see his social media, he's always trying to achieve his goals and dreams. So Joshua, I appreciate you coming on today.
I appreciate you having me, and I'm super excited. I'm
Awesome,
super.
man. I'm glad. I'm glad. So tell the audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do,
Yeah.
where you're from.
Yeah. Again, my name is Joshua. I was born in Gibraltar, of all places. It's a rare one. I was raised in the south of France. I was raised by a single dad. He's a sailor, so he's a man's man. He's a tough dude, but he's actually, I always like to talk about my dad because he had such a good balance of being a man's man and being tough and making sure to instill a ton of resilience within me as not just a kid, but as a kid with CF, but also he was also just caring. He wasn't one of those tough guys and then you never said I love
Right.
you. Nothing like
Right.
that. He was a good dad. So I was born in Gibraltar. I was raised in the south of France for 11 and a half years. So I
Wow.
had an interesting upbringing. I always grew up speaking French. My dad's British, but all my friends, and I went to French school, so I'm fluent in French. And I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at 24 hours old. So pretty much right after birth, they pretty quickly realized I had a pretty nasty mutation of CF. I got two mutations, and I can't remember which ones they are. Um, but basically, I asked my doctor a few years ago because I'd never asked. I was like, "So what? How bad is my CF? Like, if we're ranking it, mild to severe?" He's like, "Well, you're in the medium to severe range, kind of in there." I was like, "Dope, sick. All right, that makes sense." Um, Spent most of my life, well, a good majority of my life, in and out of hospital, like any other CF patient. Christmases in hospital,
Mm.
birthdays. I missed most of elementary through high school. I missed most of my schooling, unfortunately, at least a good amount.
Yeah.
I did the math. I probably spent close to 100,000 hours in hospital, which is like
Wow.
6, 7, 8 years, something like that in hospital
Wow.
total. So I'm no stranger. But I was at the same time, although I was in out of hospital, I took care of myself. My dad took care of me. I was always an active kid. I played soccer growing up in France, and then when we moved to Canada in 2010, I started playing rugby because my friends were like, "You got to play rugby," and it was the best thing, one of the best things I ever did because it kept me alive.
Mm.
It kept me alive before Trikafta was around and all that. It kept me healthy, and I still got sick every now and then and had hospital stays. That was just inevitable, especially during Canadian winters. I didn't handle them very well. I
Yeah.
went from the Mediterranean, from the beaches in the Mediterranean, to dealing with Canadian winters. That hit me pretty hard.
I can
That
imagine.
definitely wasn't easy. And then yeah, so now I'm here, 26 years old, really healthy, thankfully because of Trikafta. I've shared this before. I was really struggling 3, 4 years ago before Trikafta. I was in my like early 20s, so I was like 23-ish. And if I'm really honest, I was getting ready to die.
Mm.
I'm not strong enough to put up a fight like physically. Like I would go to the gym and I just like couldn't do it. I quit my job because I was too sick. It was just a desk job, and I couldn't even do that 8 hours at the desk. I was just way too unwell. And I literally walked into my boss's office one day. And I was like, I'm going to quit right now. I can't do this. I'm too sick. And thankfully, he was really nice. He was like, dude, I totally get it. No worries.
Wow.
And then I quit that job and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I was like, I think I'm going to go on government financial aid and try my absolute best to stay alive. But I wasn't very hopeful, unfortunately. So,
Yeah.
and then literally not even a week and a half later, my CF team was like, Josh, you're getting Trikafta.
Wow.
And it thankfully my body, I'm very grateful my body reacted really well to it. And within a week or two, I was like running again, back
Wow.
in the gym. Within few weeks after that, I got a full-time job in a restaurant. So yeah, it changed my life. And now I'm here healthy and trying to help the younger generation or anyone with a chronic illness take care of themselves because I did the mistakes. So
Yeah.
that's yeah.
Awesome. Well, Josh, thank you for that introduction. And it's interesting how people get connected. Me and you have a lot of similarities just from telling me your intro. So I'm
Mhm.
English as well. Both of my parents are English.
Okay.
I was very sick and dying before I got Trikafta. We have a
Mhm.
lot of similarities in this journey, and I know when I speak to a lot of CFers, there's a lot of similarities, obviously, in
Always, yeah,
certain
of
things that we
course.
have to get through. But I just want to touch on a couple things. Now, you advocate in the chronic illness community,
Mhm.
and I just want to know what got you into that, and what made you what did you decide to do to be able to share your, because a lot of people are scared to share their stories, and you have to be vulnerable. You have to be okay with being made fun of, maybe, and
Yeah.
being told that you get put on a different category when people think that you're sick and have chronic illness. These are my experiences that I've had as
Yeah.
well. So why did you decide to be an advocate for the illness and start to share your story?
One, I think it goes back to my father again. He was like, who cares what people think? So then when I started posting online, I definitely, even still, there's a bit of nerves. I'm like, oh, I don't want this to come out cringe or a little bit
Yeah,
embarrassing. But I never really cared about people judging me for my CF. That was never an issue. I was always open about it. I never hid it from anyone. So that it didn't bother me at all. And I fought really hard. And
mm,
over the years of fighting hard and being sick and then getting back healthy, people were like, man, like you keep fighting and you need to share that mindset with people because it's not easy. And I'm not 100% perfect. I have days when I'm like, man, if I have to do one more physio treatment, I'm going
sure.
to throw this thing through the window. So
Yeah.
I have bad days too, of course. But I think I'm in a position where I've gone through the battles of depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, suicide attempts, and
Wow.
just like come out the other side like super resilient, mentally resilient. And I was like, man, okay, I can share my story and I know it'll help someone because someone else is going through it, if not worse, right? So I was like, if I
Absolutely.
can share how I went from really struggling to being really strong and resilient, then I
Mhm.
think there's some benefit there for the people.
Absolutely. You've been through the fire, Josh. You've been through the
Yeah,
fire. And
absolutely. Yeah,
we have to teach and help people when we've been through the fire, help heal
exactly.
themselves.
Exactly.
Um, this is probably a deep question, but
Mhm.
I enjoy getting deep and understanding the truths
Mhm.
of the tragedies of life. And
Mhm.
we've battling with depression and the dark thoughts when you're going through this. I mean, in general, anybody in life, this is a part of life
Yeah.
where it happens to the best of us. Now, you said you had suicidal thoughts and you said an attempt as well. Can you speak a little bit
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, well, there was more complications than just CF. It's so I didn't get my permanent residency, so my social insurance number in Canada to 2019, and so I couldn't work. And so all my friends were going to university. They were all getting good jobs, and I was stuck. I couldn't go to work. I legally couldn't get a job. I couldn't go to school. So I was 22 years old with CF, thinking, I'm gonna die
Mm,
sooner than all my friends, and I'm not allowed to start my life. I'm not allowed to get a career. I'm not allowed to get a job. I can't and I was just like, what is the point? I'm being held back so much. All my friends are doing these great things, and I'm not allowed to. And on top of that, I was just struggling with my health. I was struggling with my mind. I was drinking and partying with my friends, and it was fun in the moments, but then the days where I wasn't, obviously I was miserable. I was just trying to numb myself from my misery. And I was just in hospital one night for CF related reasons. My health wasn't good because of my partying and not taking care of myself. And I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm done. So I had I'll get pretty detailed about it. I don't
please.
mind. I had a razor to shave with in my bathroom, and I broke out the razors and I tried to slice my wrist, and I went for it and I didn't go deep enough. And then a nurse came in, actually two security guards came in, because I had spoken to my friend on the phone earlier, and I was like, I didn't tell her I was going to do anything, but I was like, I don't know how much longer I'm going to do this for. Because my two choices were either throw a chair through the window and jump off the eighth floor or do this. And that window looked pretty strong. So I went for the razor
Wow.
instead. And so then, yeah, they helped me out. And then I was on watch in hospital for I think the next 2 days, spoke to a psychiatrist, you know, all that jazz. And so, That was actually one of the toughest parts of my life was telling my dad I did that because he
Mm,
raised me as a single dad. He raised me to be strong, and I just had a moment of weakness that had been building up for quite some time,
yeah.
quite a few years. And that was a tough, tough moment to tell my dad. That was really tough.
Yeah, I could imagine. Well,
Yeah.
Josh, I appreciate you sharing that with me because I know
Mhm,
that's hard.
mhm.
Um, when after that happened, obviously, I'm so glad that not you didn't end up going through with the whole entire thing. Thank God for that. And what after this process, I'm sure you had a lot of thoughts of like, what did I just try to do to myself, and all the thoughts of maybe with your father. And I know that a lot of times when people have those thoughts, and I think that if everybody's being honest with themselves, everybody has those thoughts of not wanting to live at least a couple times in their lives. If you're going through something depressing and you're going through something dark and
Yeah.
something is happening in your life, if you're honest, which a lot of people aren't nowadays, we all have those thoughts of not wanting to be around anymore.
Yeah.
And when you got past that point and when you looked back,
Mhm.
what was your explanation to yourself of why it didn't happen?
Uh, I think I knew I had it in me to be someone else.
Hmm.
And so after it happened and I had gotten out of hospital and I was off treatments, subconsciously, without even thinking about it, I just went into full like rebuild mode, right? I completely broke myself down. I was like, where am I lacking? Where am I failing? What is wrong with me? And that was tough. That was a lot of like looking deep within and being like, you're not good in this area. You're
Hmm.
not good in this area. You're good at a couple things. And it made me sad at times because I had to be really honest with myself, like,
Yeah.
you're lacking this and this and this. Um, but then I quickly discovered through that process that I really enjoyed the process of being a little bit better today than I was the day before.
Mhm.
And I really started falling in love with that. And it was a slow process. I mean, that was like now I love it. But that was, 5, 6 years of doing that and then falling face first a couple times and, taking 10 steps backwards.
Right.
But then I really just fell in love with that. Like, you know what? If I'm gonna be miserable, I might as well just try and be happy
Right.
and really fight for it. And I really did. And I started going to the gym a lot. And I was already like, I played sports. I was already going to the gym a lot beforehand, but I didn't have a job and I couldn't go to school. So what else was I gonna do? So I was in the gym like 6, 7 days a week, twice a day. I literally had nothing else to do. And so I got really fit and like just really fell in love with the gym. And I was like, great. And then, I still wasn't perfect. And then once I had my body a bit more under control, then I really started going in, like I said, diving in deep and like, what is wrong with me? Where are my anxieties coming from? Where are my depressions coming from? What is going on? I went to therapy, and it was very helpful. And so, yeah, it was just a breaking myself down, being super honest with myself, which
Yeah.
is not easy.
No.
Um, and then yeah, and just practice. It's actually you don't think of happiness as something you practice. A lot of people think
Mm.
is that you either are or you aren't. But man, you really have to practice it. You really do.
It's an everyday battle, I think,
Yeah,
just to keep yourself in that right mentality of, and especially when you're around a lot of negativity and bad things are happening to you.
yeah,
And obviously, like, I relate to you on everything you're saying on a lot of levels. You have to go back and kind of relive the traumas
yeah.
of your life to try to understand who you are and try to heal them. And revisiting them can be the most painful thing in the world.
It's not easy.
And when you went back and you analyzed yourself and self-reflected and went back and tried to understand why you were the way you were, what did you come to terms with? Like, what was some of the stuff that you started to understand about yourself and why you operated in the way you operate now? What are some of those things that you went through mentally and emotionally and maybe even physically to try to understand why you are the way that you are?
What I realized pretty quickly is that all my limitations, I mean, this sounds so corny, but all my limitations were completely set by me.
Yeah.
No one else was doing it because everyone else was supportive. Everyone else was like, Josh,
Mhm.
you're the best, you're the greatest, you're tough, you're resilient,
Yeah.
you're an incredible person, you have CF, you do all this stuff. So everyone was hyping me up. So
Right.
really all that misery was completely internal. It was completely my own brain building up these walls of limitation to myself.
Mm.
And that's what I realized. I was like, this is completely coming from within. I have no excuse.
Yeah.
I need to stop coming up with excuses because it's all me.
Right.
Um, yeah, I found that out pretty quickly. I was like, okay, it's time to change that fast, or it's going to get bad.
Yeah, it becomes a bit of a self-sabotaging kind of thing.
Becomes a habit.
Yeah,
Negativity becomes a habit really
right.
fast. I
Yeah.
mean, your mind will grow whatever you plant in it,
Mhm.
good or bad.
Yeah.
And so if you talk negatively to yourself every day, and I feel like when someone first told me that, because I heard that years ago, I was like, whatever, dude. But
Yeah.
no, really, like once you start practicing the opposite,
Exactly.
yeah, like even if that little bit I mean, in a sense, you're kind of deceiving yourself into happiness at first,
Yeah.
but do it over and over and then actually do things that you enjoy and go to the gym or art,
Yeah.
whatever it be,
Yeah.
then you will turn into a happy person,
Yeah.
at least a happier
It
person.
becomes your new normal. You have to trick yourself a lot of times. You have to
Yeah.
make it a routine and a habit because, like anything, like going to the gym, brushing your teeth, taking a shower, like you have to do
Yeah.
this every single day. It's not just
Mhm.
one thing and then you're fixed out. You know what I mean? And as you get older, obviously, sometimes it becomes a bit harder and then you
Yeah.
get better at it. And then all of a sudden you're a completely changed person.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's an incredible story. Thanks for sharing that with me. And I was just looking at your Instagram a little bit and I was just kind of seeing, what you enjoy talking about. And I thought it was interesting because I've experienced this topic of conversation in our community is very interesting. There's a clip that you were talking about, sorry, excuse me, loneliness with cystic fibrosis.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
that's a huge one. And that's something that I've experienced too. And I was always kind of mad at the world for making me feel so lonely all the
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah.
speak a little bit about that and like, some of the
Yeah.
experiences and maybe how you got over that or got through that.
Mhm. Um, yeah, it's really lonely and it's weird because CF is still lonely even when you have some CF friends
Yeah,
because you all experience it a little bit differently.
sure.
Um, there are ways to work around that. I think, you just got to accept that it's a little bit different for everyone. That's something you just have to accept no matter what.
Right.
You're still your own person, even if two of you have CF, you're still your own person. So I think having a little community was really helpful. I mentioned I got added to like a CF group chat on Snapchat. And that was really because that was right in like the peak of me like really struggling. That was the timing couldn't be more perfect.
Wow.
My friend Victoria added me to that group. Victoria has CF as well. She unfortunately had cancer as well. She had stomach cancer, I believe, and she passed away a few years ago.
Oh, so sorry.
But her adding me to that group was one of the best things that ever happened to me because I made friends in there that I still talk to all the time now. Um, uh, and actually, Riley was sort of who we know was sort of an extension of that because I got
Mhm.
added to another group from a person in my group, and then I met Riley in that group. So trying to find people you can connect with, but also being okay with like, okay, they're not gonna always understand exactly what I'm going through.
Right.
You're still your own freaking person, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so I like to I like to talk about it too because I realized when I was struggling, even in my like teens when I was younger, if I had someone that maybe I wasn't even talking to, but just watching their videos on the internet, and they had CF or had a condition similar or something severe, and they were still going after their goals, still taking care of themselves, and talking about their condition, how it affects them, that just would have helped me so much.
Yeah,
Instead of, it would have been like a little bit of guidance instead of trying to figure out by myself all the time.
sure.
So I think that's why I post. I hope that some kid was like come across it and be like, oh, wait a minute, I have CF. He's doing things. I can do things. Like that's it.
Yes.
That's the
That's
goal.
exactly why I do it too. And that's
Yeah.
why I got into it because
Yeah.
when I was growing up, I'm sure just like you, there was nobody that I could go online and look at that had
No.
the same thing and was going through the same thing as me. And then also fighting against it and accomplishing things in their lives that we're kind of told that we can't accomplish. So that's one of the reasons why I got into it too. I kept my illness a secret for 20 plus years.
Interesting. That's pretty, see, that's wild to me. You're the
Yeah.
opposite of me. I was so why were you like,
Embarrassed,
yeah,
self-conscious, never felt like I was normal, felt like I was different, was ashamed.
yeah,
There's a lot of it that go, and I've unraveled this all, I've unraveled it all and tried
yeah,
to understand what happened and what it was. And that's
mhm,
really what it was. I was ashamed. I wanted to feel normal. I was around all these people. I didn't fully understand what I had and what
mhm,
this was. I just knew I was sick and I was dying and I didn't want to be a burden to other people
yeah,
and put all the above, you know what I mean? But but I was able to do things that I realized that other CFers weren't able to do in certain aspects. Not to
Yeah.
say that I'm better or anything like that. I'm just saying that
Right.
I was able to physically do stuff. My mentality was a bit different.
Mhm.
And, I wanted to share that with the community because I think that it would help. Because a lot of times when I'm speaking, I'm also speaking to myself.
Yeah.
I'm also trying to motivate myself and inspire
Yeah.
myself. It's not just about the people that I'm speaking to or speaking with. I have to give that self-talk to myself. Can CF can beat you down and make you think that once you get into that bad negative self-talk, it becomes a habit, like you were just saying. And then all of a sudden you're an adult now and you're trying to function and trying to be in relationships and all this stuff, and the trauma from the illness is hitting you all at one time. And you have to relive it and go back and understand why you went through that and
Yeah.
understand what your purpose is. And it's interesting how we find our purpose through the most darkest times in our life. That's what I think, through the darkest times of CF, and let alone not even CF, just life in general.
Yeah. I find it interesting you mentioned like talking about it helps you too. Same here. Like posting
Absolutely.
videos, it's it almost might be getting to a point where it's more for me,
Exactly.
and then the byproduct is just helping other people. But I
Exactly.
love it. It's like my own little therapy session when I make these little videos, whatever it may
Yes.
be. It's really
Yes.
helpful.
And it's so important too, because if you don't have enough, I think that stems and is connected to the loneliness,
Yeah.
because we don't have a lot of people that understand. I remember when I was growing up with cystic fibrosis, I remember never being really understood.
Yeah. Yeah.
As soon as I
Exactly.
would start to talk about it, get into detail about what I was experiencing, what I was feeling, people really didn't want to hear about it too much.
Yeah.
And they wanted to try to relate to me and kind of, not understand, and all that kind of stuff. And I get it. I get it. People, it's tragic, and a lot of people don't want to go deep and get into tragedy. I get it because it's tough, and sometimes we have to look in the mirror and reflect on ourselves. But yeah, I just think that it's so important to be able to share your story, and that's a part of the purpose of why you have CF too, I think.
I think so. I think I definitely at points in my life was like, why me?
Yeah, of course.
Depression. But now I'm at a point where I'm like, no, I'm exactly the right person to have CF
Yeah,
because I'm gonna, be the best version of myself regardless, and
yeah,
that'll be beneficial to the people in the world around me.
exactly. It's all about the perception and how we think about it, right?
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
have to change that, man, because I went through that. The negative, it was always negative, negative,
Yeah.
negative, negative. Like, oh, I have this, I have that. Why do I have this? Why me? Why me? Why this? And then when you flip it and go, look what I've gotten from this.
Yeah.
Look at the
Yeah.
wisdom I have and the empathy I have and the
Yeah.
knowledge that I have to give back to the people that are around me. And
Exactly.
some people, they'll ask, maybe they ask you why you're good at speaking and articulating and helping people and giving them wisdom, and you wonder where that comes from. But it comes from the darkness. It
Yeah.
comes from learning. It comes from almost dying while you're a child. Like most
Yeah.
people don't ever experience that.
Yeah.
So you, of course, are going to get something from that, and you should get something from it, because don't go through it for no reason and just sit
Yeah.
by yourself and keep negative self-talking yourself into the grave. And I think that that's very important. Also another thing that I was observing you were talking about picking a career when you know you're going to die.
Yeah.
This is a huge one, I think, too, because
Oh, it's a tough one, man.
it's a
It's a
tough
tough
one,
one.
because as we're young, we're looking around and everyone's getting a
Yeah.
career. They're going to college and they're doing their thing. They're getting married and having
Yeah.
children and all this stuff. And you're
Mhm.
looking and you never want to feel the same. So speak a little bit about on like, trying to pick your
I
journey and your path of working and having a career when you know you're dying.
think that for me, at least in the last few years, has been the most difficult challenge I've had in a while. I think now that I've overcome my depression and my anxiety, I mean, that is like my biggest challenge. And I feel sorry for my fiance because I talk about it all the time, but it's just because I'm still, although I've come a long way,
Yeah.
God, do I struggle with that question. I think it's like because a career, if you want to be established in a sector and whatever it may be,
Hmm.
that'll often take you 10, 15, 20 years
Or
to
more.
garner a lot of respect and a lot of knowledge.
Sure.
In some cases. And so in my mind, I'm like, man, if I'm 26 now and I still have this mindset that I'm gonna die when I'm like 40, 41, 45,
Mm.
I'm not gonna get to that pro level I want to be at and whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
I might get close, but by the time I'm ready to make that jump, probably gonna be too sickly to work. That's like
Mm.
my biggest fear and it's so paralyzing.
Yes.
Um, and that is actually something it's on my mind all the time. And I work, it's like I said, it's my biggest battle right now is
Yeah.
figuring out what to do. I think one thing I try to remind myself is you don't know. And I know it's easy, like you just don't know where you're going to die. Like it'll happen any moment or,
Exactly.
60 years down the line. You just don't know. And I know that. But when you've had 26 years of doctors and friends and the people on the internet being like, you have CF, you're probably going to die. You're going to
Mhm.
know all your friends and loved ones.
Yeah.
That is a tough thing to unlearn.
Oh, it's very tough.
And trying to be like, okay, well, what career do I pick that's going to be beneficial and make me happy, but also, it's going to pay my bills too. That's
Yeah.
something that's going to pay me a bit of money so I can survive and maybe do some travel in the meantime.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Well, I know I don't want to be the unappointed life coach and try to give
mm,
you advice that you don't want to hear. But if you don't mind, I've dealt with this too, and I can maybe ease
please.
your mind with something, maybe help
Yeah,
you a little bit. I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe it'll help or maybe it won't. But I've been through this too. Like I know exactly what you're talking about. And for me, this is what I would recommend for you, just as a
Mhm,
friend and as a fellow person that is dealing with this. Uh,
mhm.
First of all, don't be so hard on yourself. That's the
Yeah,
first thing.
yeah,
That'll ease your mind. Live in the present moment instead of living in the future,
yeah.
because that's what we're doing when we're thinking about all that. Oh, we're gonna die when this, and we're not gonna be able to get to this, and now I can't do this, and I gotta get that. We're just time traveling in our mind.
Yeah.
That'll paralyze you, just that in itself.
Mhm,
Try to stay in the present moment. Don't be so hard on yourself. Have
mhm,
gratitude of where you are and what you're doing
yeah,
and what you have now. And when you're
mhm,
trying to find something that you want to do, and the world is presenting things that they do, and we're continually comparing ourselves to other
mhm,
people, comparison is the thief of joy. So as
mhm.
soon as we start comparing things, we start to lose our joy on the inside.
Yeah,
And then we just go down these rabbit holes.
yeah.
But everybody has something that they love. I always encourage people to do this because people think that I'm crazy because I don't work for anybody. I've tried to work for myself for my entire adulthood. I don't believe in sitting in a place working for someone else and just
Yeah.
sucking my soul out of my body. I don't chase money anymore. I don't chase all that stuff. And I get it. We have to have money and we have to support ourselves. And we all have to go through that bit of that journey.
Yeah.
But I would encourage you to whatever you love to do, whatever inspires you, whatever you feel like you're most talented with, and what other people are telling you that you're talented with, because that's
Mhm,
important.
mhm.
Just go with that
Yeah,
and take it day by day.
yeah.
Start to develop a plan and start to put it into place. Start to put yourself out there. And
Mhm,
if something that you're good at and you know that you're good at and everybody around you is telling you that you're good at, which I'm sure you have something like that, like everybody does, just try to put that into play.
yeah.
And when you're good at something and it's your purpose and you don't have to work I'm sorry, it doesn't feel like work to you,
Mhm.
that's what you should be doing.
Yeah,
And that's what
yeah.
you should, and once you start doing that, those feelings kind of dissipate because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Mhm,
The reason why we have these feelings of stress and we're living in the future is because we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. So pay attention to how you feel when you're in places around people, what people are saying to you. We have to really pay attention to this.
yeah.
Because if we just negate it and start to go with society and go, I got to get the 9 to 5, I got to work here, I got to pay my bills, I got to do this, I want to get this and this, it's such a trap. And it just stresses you out and puts you in a position where you are not going to enjoy your life. And
So,
yeah, so I would just encourage you not to be too hard on yourself because I've been hard on myself a lot in my
mhm,
life.
mhm.
And once,
And I've been
once,
I've been working on it. I've
yeah.
been
Oh,
working.
it's a process.
I've the being in the moment, the gratitude, taking it
Yeah.
day by day. Actually, even in the last few weeks, I have found that I've been better at it. A lot better.
Awesome.
I've even like a couple months ago, I was really struggling with all of it.
Yeah.
And then funny enough, like posting more content has been a weird side effect of creating content has made me enjoy the
Yeah.
process of creating that content, which has kept
Yeah.
me more present, more in the moment, enjoying the journey of building and creating my life.
Yeah.
And that was a weird side effect I didn't expect at all.
And keep with it then,
Being
because
mindful. Yeah, 100%. And
that's what's,
I'm loving it. And I'm just gonna keep showing my life as it progresses and I keep going. Because it's actually more therapeutic to me than anything. It's been really lovely.
and not only do you love it, but you're good at it. You
Yeah, I
see?
appreciate it. It's
Yeah.
fun.
So,
Right?
It's smooth for you. It doesn't seem forced. You just get on a camera and start speaking. You know how difficult it is for most of the population to get in front of a camera and start speaking?
Yeah. Yeah.
Very difficult. People
Yeah.
don't know. People start to freeze when the camera comes on.
Yeah.
But when you have a purpose and you have to get it out, it doesn't matter if there's a camera in front of you or not.
Yeah.
It's just your purpose, and it just
There's
comes.
definitely a little learning curve, a little anxiety when I first started,
Of
but
course, me
now
too.
I don't mind filming. It's actually quite
Yeah,
fun.
yeah. It's the way you get your message to people.
Yeah,
And whether one person sees it or a million people see it, the purpose is fulfilled.
absolutely. I'm not looking at the numbers. I'm just gonna keep putting out content, enjoying myself,
Exactly.
and yeah, whatever comes from it comes from it. This came from it. I mean, I know, like technically, this came from it. You saw my, you spoke to me. You looked
Exactly.
at my social media.
Exactly.
Yeah,
When you're
yeah,
doing what you're supposed to do, the blessings and the opportunities come to you. You don't have to chase
absolutely,
them.
absolutely,
See,
absolutely.
everybody's chasing. That's
Yeah,
the thing. Sit back, do what you were supposed to do,
will
and
come to
then
you.
the blessings
Yeah,
come to you. We don't have to chase it. Okay,
absolutely.
that's great. I appreciate that conversation because it's picking a career when you think you're gonna die, doing anything when you think you're gonna die. It's just
Yeah.
I don't wish it on my worst enemy.
I think, and one more thing that I
Yeah,
think is super crucial, if you can master it in business, a lot of people, a lot of times, let's say you have multiple choices, you just never know what that other choice is going to be if you pick this one.
yeah.
So, my God, just go for it. Just pick
Go
it.
for it.
Go. Like there's literally no way in hell that you can know what the other decision will lead to. So
Exactly.
just pick one of them and go.
And
And
that
you
decision maybe won't be the final thing, but it can lead you to the final thing. You might
exactly.
meet somebody there that connects you over here, and then you're over here. Like you never know. Like you always say, like it's so true because you have to say yes to opportunity, no matter
Yeah.
if the opportunity sits right with you on the inside, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's opportunities that are going to come to you. And if it's connected to your purpose and what you're doing, always say yes, even when your body has anxiety or you feel nervous
Yeah.
about it. Just go for it. Just do it. Exactly right. Okay. I want to transition just a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you were saying a little bit earlier, like you had that strength from your father and he instilled that into you. And I think that is also connected to English culture, just my opinion. They're very
Yeah.
tough people and
Yeah.
they come from hard backgrounds and they have to kind of get up and get on with things. I think
Yeah,
that
for sure.
there's benefits and, obviously there's not benefits too. But
Yeah.
so did you always have that mentality? Did you always have the mentality of I got to get over it? I'm strong. I have strength. I'm going to push through it. Or is that something that you had to cultivate and work on?
You know what? I think I'll admit that I was pretty good at it from a pretty young age.
Okay.
And I definitely made excuses here and there, dropped the ball here and there. But from a pretty young age, I was pretty good at it. I was always a keen go-getter. If all the other kids were playing soccer, I played soccer. If all the other kids were running around, I ran around.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't even know how to make excuses until I got older, until I really became my own person. And then I started making excuses for myself.
Yeah.
But up until, from my childhood, I would say up until, high school, I just went for it without hesitation, whatever it may be. It's usually in sports and activity because there's not much else going on in your life at that age.
Hmm.
And I had no hesitation. I just went for it no matter what. And that definitely, again, from my dad, he was like, I'd scrape a knee and be like, get up, you're
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Exactly.
If I
Exactly.
was running around on a soccer field, I was like, Dad, I'm tired. He's like, yeah, you're still alive. Keep going.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And it was
Exactly.
like the best thing he ever could have done for me.
Yep.
He never was like, okay, let's go sit down, let's go relax. Like never.
Yeah. Yeah.
And gosh, it was the best thing he ever did for me. And I actually posted a video talking about this, about overprotective parents of
Hmm.
kids with chronic diseases. Yeah, I mean, it's a fine, tough balance. And I'm not a parent, so I
Of course.
don't want to offend any parent out there that has a kid with a
Sure.
chronic condition. But hanging over them and hovering over that kid, you instill weakness in that child.
Absolutely.
You absolutely do. And so you gotta let them scrape their knees. I mean, this is regardless. Like, if you have a
Sure.
kid, this should be the way you go about it.
Right.
But when you have a kid with a chronic condition, it's really hard to remind yourself of that because you're like, oh my gosh, they're gonna get hurt, they're gonna get sick, and they're gonna be in hospital, and then blah blah, blah. And then it's just a
Yeah.
spiral. So that's one of my messages that I would love to focus on and
Mhm.
push is parents of sick kids,
Yeah.
let them have fun. Let them do their thing. Let them be
Yeah.
adventurous. Don't hover over them. You will. it'll be to the detriment of the child if you just
Absolutely.
let them do anything.
And cystic fibrosis, just specifically, I'm sure every chronic illness has the same experience, but it softens it. Let me find out. It softens you.
Hmm.
It's already softening you and making you feel weak.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if somebody comes along and keeps
Adds
softening
to it.
you and keeps
Yeah.
making you weaker and gives you excuses and gives you a way
Adding
out.
wood to the fire, it's feeding the flame,
Exactly. Yeah.
negativity, weakness, 100%.
Exactly. And we have to, I speak on that all the time. A lot of people disagree with my attitude on that, and that's okay. But I just think that, there's a reason you have to have that, man. You have to have the strength. You have to have it because
Yeah.
if you don't have it, you're going to be in a lot of trouble and you're going to
Yeah.
struggle very, very hard in this life. And
Absolutely.
especially
Yeah.
with this illness. I mean, it's difficult on its own, but then you add every component of life on top of it, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this anymore.
And I came from a strong background and I still struggled.
Sure.
I can
Me
only
too.
imagine
Oh yeah. Sometimes
being,
we struggle even more when we come from that background.
yeah. So I can only imagine growing up with, you know, to be harsh, with weakness instilled in me
Sure.
from my parents, like how much harder those years would be. I don't think I would have made it
No,
if it went the way I was raised.
yeah, it's so true.
Mhm.
You know, I always ask all my CF guests that come on, I always ask them, why do you think that you have CF?
I think there's good reason, and whether it's God or the universe or pure chance, whatever it might be, I think there's a good reason, and I think it's because I'm in a position where I can stand up to it and be
Mhm.
resilient and strong,
Yeah.
and I can say, "Hey, look what I've done. If I can do it."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't have that's the other thing too, and this is not to bash other CF patients. I don't have a mild case of CF. This thing's trying to kill me, and it's been trying to kill me pretty aggressively for a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I put up a hell of a fight. So I really want to, I think that's why. It's
Yeah.
because I'm putting up one hell of a fight and I can
Yeah.
show that to others and they can be like, well, if he can do it, I can do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's a part of the journey too. Like there's a lot of people that I know with CF that didn't make it as far as us.
Absolutely.
So
And
if we don't speak and we don't tell our story and people have lost their lives because of this,
yeah,
what's the whole purpose then? You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like we just sit here and
exactly.
have an illness and die. I don't think that that's the
No,
purpose of this
that's
life.
why I'm so vocal. I want everyone to know, not to be like, oh, look, Josh is so cool, but be like, no, look, he's surviving. Like
Yeah,
he's staying
exactly.
alive through his own willpower and strength and resilience
Absolutely.
with support too of my loved ones, not to discredit anyone around me.
Sure.
But yeah, that I think it's exactly why it's important. We got to share it to help others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now I noticed that you are in a incredible relationship, it looks like.
Yes.
Congratulations on the engagement, by the way.
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
can you just, I know like this is an interesting topic as well with CF and
Ooh,
relationships
ooh,
and having to discuss maybe like children and life expectancy. And maybe does somebody want to put the time into somebody that's sick? These are
100%.
honest conversations that we have to have with somebody.
Yeah.
And I've been in relationships before where people have left because I'm sick. And,
Yeah.
we all have to go through certain levels of
I got
pain.
experience.
Yeah. And it's actually quite cruel and harsh, but life is cruel and harsh. So
Yeah.
what you gonna do?
Absolutely.
So just kind of can you just break down a little bit about like how that happened, your relationship, maybe how you guys met, and maybe some of the conversations, the tough conversations that you had
Yeah.
to have with each other?
Hmm. Well, we met actually the very night I committed or tried to commit suicide, which is
Wow.
interesting. So I had done all that and I was sitting in bed and I was like, I might as well go
That
on Tinder. There's nothing else to do.
Well, hold on. Can I just stop you right there? Because that's actually incredible. That the timing of that is incredible.
I Right,
God sent you somebody to help you.
right.
Maybe I think that that's definitely divine
Dude, it
intervention,
was,
man.
and you know what? She worked at the hospital, so that's why we
Of
matched.
course.
Because she was working downstairs doing some other stuff.
It's just incredible. Yeah.
We
Okay.
had never met. So
That's incredible.
I was like, yeah, I guess I'll go on Tinder. Nothing else to do.
Yeah. Of course.
So we matched and we actually were friends for, let me see, 2018. We were friends for 5 or 6 years before we started dating.
That's important.
Just on and off friends. And then I had a relationship and we didn't talk for a while. And then I came
Mm.
out of the relationship and I was like, hey, I hope you're doing well. We haven't talked in ages.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we like slowly worked towards dating. And then eventually she moved to my city. And I was like, well, I think I'm madly in love with you. So this is going to work out. So
Wow.
It was so yeah. So I met her that very night.
That's
And
insane.
that's how we met, which is so wild. And then yeah, so we had a foundation of friendship. We She would come over from the island, from Vancouver Island to Vancouver. And then we just hung out every other weekend. And then eventually she moved here. And then eventually I was like, I'm really in love with you. So, and then she was like, perfect, because me too. And I was like, great.
I was gonna say, I hope it's reciprocated on the other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, she has been so supportive. And we've had those difficult conversations. Now, she doesn't want children. I can't have kids because of CF. So that couldn't have been worked out any better,
That
really.
worked out for you,
That
yeah.
worked out really well. Um,
And can I
we've
ask
also,
why she doesn't want to have children?
I think, she comes from a difficult family. I won't reveal too much, but
Yeah, yeah.
she's a little sister and she helped to raise her a lot. And she was
Got
like,
it.
did the mother thing, you know?
Got you. Okay. So she's already kind of seen how that all worked out.
Yeah. And,
Got it.
and
That's
yeah, just
tough.
comes from a difficult family. And it's like, and then also, to look at the future, she's like, this world is an absolute gong show. I don't know if I want to bring a kid into this world.
Yeah, I don't blame that at all. I
And
agree with that 100%.
I think it's super valid. So that worked out well, that I can't have kids and she doesn't want any. And we've had those conversations of like, or actually she's told me, her family has brought up the conversation like, yes, yeah. Are you prepared for that? Are you prepared to take care of him when it gets bad?
Yeah.
Uh, are you prepared to potentially be a widow? And that's a very real possibility. That's a tough
Oh,
conversation.
that's tough.
And she's like, yeah, 100%. So I actually got sick when we first started dating, I think it was like a few months into us dating, like 6 months or so. And I went to hospital. She visited me every day. She brought me food. She washed my hair when I couldn't because I had IVs in my arms. Like,
She
she's
loves you.
badass. She's badass, man. She's awesome.
That's awesome.
And she's also just a dope human being. And we're not afraid to have difficult conversations. We also talk everything out. We don't argue. We don't fight.
Yeah.
Sit down. If there's a disagreement, we just chat it out.
Yeah. And that's the foundation of friendship, though. That's so important.
100%. And I think that's why it works, is because we were friends for a while. And
For
like,
sure.
if you have a good friendship, you don't argue with your friends, and that I just care.
Exactly. You know how to communicate with your friends.
Exactly. So it's just been nothing but greatness. It's been amazing. So
Awesome.
I proposed to her back in April and she said, yeah. So we're getting
Well,
married next year, man. That's
awesome,
awesome.
man. Well, congratulations. I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
It's always nice to have somebody to be with when you're going through life, you know?
And that's the other thing too. Just having a person is so motivating.
Oh, it's
Just
the
having
greatest.
someone there who like you want to take care of. Like, not to be too materialistic, but like, man, I want to make a ton of money so she doesn't have to work. That'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's the
Yeah,
dream, man. That's the
yeah,
dream.
exactly. And if she wants to work, she can, but if she doesn't want to, that'd be great. Like that's
That's
it.
that's the dream, man. Yeah, I'm right there with you on that.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, it's nice that you have that, and the friendship basis is very important. I always tell people that, like, be friends first and see how that
Yeah.
goes, you know?
100%.
Because then when it gets tough, you'll talk like friends and not like, most
Yeah.
spouses and people that are
Exactly.
married nowadays.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Very good point.
Well, Josh, I think this conversation has been really great. Is there anything that you want to ask me, talk about before we go?
I want to know what your goal is right now with this podcast, with your social media. What's your focus? Is there one or a few core messages that you want to put out into the world of CF and chronic illnesses?
Yeah, that's a great question. The reason why I'll start here. The reason why I started this show is because, I started advocating for CF, I would say I'm 31 now. So when I was 25 or 26, I started when I was very sick.
Yeah.
And, I was dying. I had the similar story. I was very low lung function. I had two options, lung transplant or Trikafta. I was a little bit weary about the Trikafta because of the side effects and all that stuff, but that's beside the point. But the reason why I started this show is because I've hosted podcasts before. I've been on multiple shows and podcasts and all this stuff and all the opportunities that have come from my telling my story.
Yeah.
And I don't like being limited on what I can say and what I cannot say.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like being told what I can talk about and what I can't talk about. And that was my experience in every avenue of being on someone else's show or being asked to host a show.
Oh.
I like to conversate. I like to hear people's stories. I like to hear the truth. I love transparency and just talking about real stuff. I don't really like talking about all the fluff that goes on in the world now that doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
And I've wanted to do this for a very long time, but I needed help, you see, because I'm a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to certain
Yeah.
stuff. And I just let God kind of guide my life, and I'm a man of faith, and that's been a huge part of my life. It's just, it's number one for me, and that's, we can get into that if you'd like, but it's just to answer your question, the purpose of this show is just to allow people that maybe don't have a million followers or aren't famous, and I'm not getting anything from them because everybody's transactional nowadays. Well, how many followers do you have? Well, like, what do you want to do? And for me, I wanted to change that game.
Yeah, I like it.
Because everybody has a story and everybody wants to share. And if you want to discuss, and I'd like to just discuss and hear people's stories. And so I said, I'm just going to start my own. And so that's where I'm at now. So I started my own. I enjoy it. I've practiced it, and I think that I'm okay at doing it. So I just going with it and seeing where it goes.
I think you're doing exactly what you should be doing. I think that's very apparent.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we go?
A big thank you, man. This is my first
of course.
I really enjoyed it. I hope to do more. So I like to talk. So this is
absolutely. Well, you did good, man. You did good for your first time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And before we go, Josh, let the audience know if you're working on anything, where they can find you, to support you and stuff like that.
So I'm definitely all over social media, everything from LinkedIn to Twitter to TikTok, all of that. My Instagram is Joshua D. Mitchell, the letter D, Joshua D. Mitchell. TikTok is the same. Twitter and Threads are the same. LinkedIn, I'm on there as Joshua Mitchell. My big goal right now that I'm working towards that is CF related, sort of two things. One, just keep posting, keep helping out, being honest, sharing my story, the good and the bad. And two, I really want to work towards creating a little community. Now, I don't want to do it on Facebook, for example, because I have found that Facebook CF groups are, frankly, they're garbage. No one's helpful. No one's actually help each other.
True.
So I'm looking at different platforms, whether it be School, Circle, Slack, whatever it may be. I'm not sure yet. I think it'll be Circle because I have a friend there who's like works for them and it'll be helpful. And so, yeah. Cool. So my goal is to very quickly create a group with CF patients and then hopefully get some medical professionals in there and then friends and family of CF patients. And anyone can post in there and be like, this is what I'm struggling with. This is what I would want help with.
I see.
And anyone can just chime in at any time. There's no obligation. And the goal is to have a group that actually has intent to help. That's not just there to post memes and stuff. And it can be fun too, and we can do all that.
Yeah.
But with really good intention. I think that would have been so cool for me when I was younger. Right. If I was like, and the difficult questions, like, hey, all my friends are drinking, they're partying. I'm 16, but I have CF, and they're telling me to get shit-faced. Like, what do I do? I'm like, well, this is what's going to happen, likely, depending on where you're at with your CF, right? So I want a group where it can be really honest, talk about all those awkward and difficult questions.
Right.
So that's what I'm working towards.
Cool.
I've made the group, but I'm not going to, shout it out yet or anything because I still in the building stages.
Okay.
But so that's what I'm working on is just keep posting and then have a really practical, helpful group for people with, frankly, any chronic illness. I want anyone there with a severe chronic illness to be able to say, this is what I have, guys. What should I be doing? I have this condition. I want to try this. What's going to happen? All that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Well, when you get that up and running, let us know. We'll promote it on our channels. And okay, so that's great. Anything else, Joshua, before we leave?
Thank you, man.
Yeah, of course.
Let's keep benefiting as many people as we can.
Yep.
And just enjoy every moment of it because I'm enjoying it, and I think you are too. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for coming on. I appreciate your time. Please, guys, like, subscribe the video, share it with friends and family, and we will see you guys all next week. Thank you again, Joshua, for joining us.
Thank you, bud. See ya.